So we're back. It's hour 3. We want to implement our keyword search on our beer page. We've kind of talked through the logic of what we're going to need to do. So I'm going to go to my page, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my order by clause. I'm going to cut this out to my clipboard. We need to move it out of here because the order by has to go at the end after we build on our where clause. So we'll start that our basic SQL just says select star from beers. And then we'll add the order by clause. So what we want to do is take our existing SQL variable and we want to append onto it. PHP has a neat operator for this. We could do this, but it's more code. We could say SQL equals SQL and order by. That's one way of doing it. I'm going to do it a little shorter. If I just say SQL dot equals, these are equivalent. So keep the current value and append on something at the end without removing the current, what we have currently. Okay, so we don't need both of these lines. I'm going to use line 33 because it's shorter. It's the same as line 34. Keep the existing value and add something on the end of it. So I'm just going to comment out my version on line 34. Oops, and I put this in the wrong place. My prepare line now needs to come down here. We don't want to prepare our command until we're done building our SQL query. So I'm going to move the prepare statement down with execute and fetch all. So we're starting the query up here, we're finishing it here, and in the middle we need to now look for keywords if the user did a keyword search. So if I save this right now, my page should run the way it does all. There shouldn't be any changes. To get all the beers should still work fine. Yeah, so it still works. Can do our sorting, no problem. I'm going to add one more beer. We've already got a red. I'm going to add another beer that has red in the name. I have 2 beers with red in the name, 2 beers with light in the name, 2 beers with Corona. So now we have enough data to make sure our searching is going to work properly, right? We want to have the same words repeated a few times. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to know if our searches are accurate. So now we need to check for keywords. Build the where clause dynamically. So the first thing we want to know is, did the user do a search? Did they type anything in our keyword box and click the search button? So how could we check that? What condition will tell us if the user clicked beer listings in the header or they typed in the search box? Okay, so if not empty, and Artem, what value do we want to check if it's not empty? Here's our form. Yeah, in this case, we want to use get rather than post. And what value in our get are we checking? So we're going to check the get collection. Right, we're going to check our get keywords. That'll be the text box value. So if get keywords is not empty, then let's store that into a variable for starters. So we'll create a local variable called keywords. So in effect, those keywords are going to be part of the URL. So grab the values out of the URL and store it into a variable. So whatever keywords appear at the end of our page name, those are now stored in a variable. But we can't write our where clause yet because we don't know how many words we have. And we said we need a separate condition for every individual word. We can't just say where name like keywords, because then it's going to search for all of them in order. So what we need to do, this is going to be a single value. What we need to do is convert this into a list of individual values. So convert single keyword value into a list of separate values. Fortunately, PHP has a function, a neat string function that will allow us to do it. It lets us take a block of text, any string, and search for some character that divides. Could be commas, could be spaces, could be slashes. We can decide what character are we looking for. And then we can divide the strings based on every time it finds that character. So what character in our keywords should we be looking for that will divide one keyword from another? Yeah, let's look for spaces. Wherever we find a space, we have a new word. Seems logical. So I'm going to create a variable called keyword list. This will actually be an array, a list of items. And see if you can quickly look. Anybody can look and find the name of the function we want to use. So it's a PHP function built into the PHP code library. It divides or converts a string into an array based on some delimiter, which in this case will be the space. Good get. String split will let us divide it, but it doesn't convert it into an array. That's the function we want. Thank you, Robert. Explode. And my code editor says, explode takes two parameters. The first parameter is what is the delimiter? So what character are we looking for that separates one item from the next? So in this case, our delimiter, just put it in quotes, is a space. No, you would need multiple explode statements. So we might do that, right? In case someone puts in a comma, we could do it, convert it again, or replace it. For now, we'll just check for spaces. And now, what is the value we want to split up or convert into an array? So we're going to take our original keyword value that will have potentially multiple words, and let's convert it into an array of individual words. Okay, so you can think of it as a conversion from a horizontal set of values into a vertical set, right? So if the user enters this, PHP, MySQL, HTML, right? That's one value. We want to convert it into this. So that's what explode will do. Take that value, look for spaces, and convert it into an array. So now we can check for each word individually, independently from the others. So just to see how this works, we won't write the where clause yet. Let's just check the word list. So if we use a for each loop, let's loop through our array. And we'll just print them out to the page. We'll just make sure that this is working properly. We'll comment this out. This is just kind of a first step. So if we try our keyword search now, if we enter some keywords in the box, we should see them printed one on top of the other on our page. So we'll disable that echo command in a minute. We're just kind of doing this for debugging. So if I type Corona Light, there's my keywords. I get Corona and Light printed here. So they're separate values now, which is good because we need those values to be separate. But whatever values are up here, they get converted into a list or an array. We'll comment that out. So we know we have keywords. We now need to add the word where into our query first. So as long as we have keywords, we'll start building the where clause. We'll take our current SQL variable and we need to add on to it the word where, a space in the word where after what we have on line 29. So I'll use dot equals space where and then another space. So we're now adding on this text onto this one. We want to do this before our loop because we only need the word where one time. We don't want to have where repeated for all the words. Where will happen before. So what will we do in here? Now, if we have two keywords, we need to add each keyword on after here. So what should we do here inside of our loop? So now our SQL says, select star from beers where. Yep, SQL dot equals. Yep. Yep. Or name like single quote and percent. We'll append it on outside word and then another wildcard character. So instead of just the word, we need a new name like and the wildcards around each one. So we're just going to keep adding on. And then at the end, we'll add the order by. Let's just print out down here. Let's print it out to the screen and see how it looks. We're on the right track. We're getting there, but we're not quite done. So if I go here, just says select star from beers. That's fine. I get all my beers. If I search Corona, how's that look? Well, a good way to do it is print it out to the screen and then, hey, why don't I copy and paste it into Workbench and run it? All right, that's pretty good, right? Works, got two records. They're the right records. So far, so good. How's that look? What's wrong with it, Brad?
Name like, so we have to add in another splitting the SQL again.
Yep. So what needs to be here? What's missing? Yeah, the word or is missing, right? If I run it that way, I get a syntax error. We're missing the word or. If I run it with the or here, it works and I get anything that matches Corona or light. So we're almost there. Where should we put the word, what line, where are we going to add in? We need to add in the word or. Where would we do it?
Right beside word. You
Yeah,
have $.
where do we have two
You
words?
can't have or after where.
If we, okay, well, let's try it here. We could put it here, right? Or let me save it and try it again. Let's see what happens. Corona light again. Well, we've got it here, which is good, but now it's throwing it on the end. So we're getting closer.
You want to check if the array is longer than 2 and then add.
Yeah, what we're going to need to do is we need to know if we're on the first element or any other element. If we're on the first element, what I like to do, what I'm going to say is, if we're not at the first element, let's put the word or here where my cursor is flashing before the name. Then we won't have it at the end. So I'll take it out here. I'm going to create another variable here. Let's create a variable called counter. We'll initialize it to 0. Each time we go around, let's increment the counter. So from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, etc. So counter plus plus means add 1 to the current value. So now before we append this part, we just need a little if statement. So add the word or if we are not on the first keyword. So if something, so what's that condition going to look like? Well, if counter is equal to 0, we don't need to do anything because that will be our first condition without the or. You can say if counter is, as long as it's greater than 0. So once we're past the first element, what should we do with our SQL variable? Yeah, let's just add in or. If we add 5 words, the first time counter is 0. So we won't have an or. But then counter becomes 1. And every time after that, we want to print the word or before our condition. No, it's not required because we're only executing a single statement. So there are some other ways you could do this, but this should work. So if we have 5 keywords, we'll have 5 conditions, but we'll have the word or in front of conditions 2, 3, 4, and 5. We won't have it in front of the first condition. So let's try this. So if I refresh Corona Light, that's better. Name like Corona or name like light. I want to search 3 words. We don't have or before the first condition, but we have or in front of the others. So this query looks accurate. It should work. If we run it. So now we get each of those words being checked individually. So this is the result that we want. Okay. Now, we didn't use bound parameters for this. There is a way of doing it with bound parameters. it would look a little bit different. I suppose we should maybe modify it. So this works, right? My list is filtered correctly now. I'm only getting beers that match one of those keywords. The challenge is, let's say I have a beer, well here, right here. When I search this way, if I search Rickards, which has a single quote in it, without the bound parameters, I'm gonna break my query. Right? Because I have this single quote inside of two other single quotes. So that's a bit of an issue. There's a few ways around this. I mean, I could try and escape single quotes and other special characters, but really we're better off using parameters. The challenge is when we've used bound parameters before, let's just go back to our delete page. You know, we have a bound parameter here. The challenge is, in this case, we know how many values we're passing to our query. We can't use bound parameters in the same way here because we don't know how many values we're passing to the SQL. Could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, we don't know. Every word is going to be its own parameter. So we can't create 5 parameters with the same name. Every parameter name has to be unique. So we can do this a little bit differently, but I don't want to leave it the way it is. So here's what I want to do. For the moment, so I'm just going to comment this line out. I'll say works, but breaks with special characters. So instead of that, we're going to do it this way. Our SQL, this is a different way of passing in parameters. Dot equals name like, and we just put in a question mark. Question mark is another PDO, just like our colon and then our parameter name. It represents a placeholder or a parameter. So now what we want to do is modify the array to add on the percent signs and the word. So it will look like this. You may have used this function with Tom, JavaScript push. So what we want to do is to our keyword list, for the current element, we're going to add a percent sign. So basically, take the current word and add the percent signs right into our list array. So if the keyword is Corona, it now becomes percent Corona percent. So we're adding percent signs to all the elements in our array. That's step 1. Step 2, rather than calling bind param, when we call execute, notice there's an optional parameters. We can pass our whole word list array in. So when we execute, our parameter is our keyword list. So this is an alternate way of using bound parameters. We've always been using the colons, naming the parameters and calling the bind param function. This accomplishes the same thing, but we need to use this method because we don't know how many parameters we have in this case. So we're converting our array to include our wildcards, and then when we call execute, rather than calling execute with no parameters, we pass in the entire word list array as one single parameter block. And now it should still work. So if I search Corona and light, whoops. It's not array push. That creates a new array. Sorry, we don't want to do that. what we want is to say keyword list counter. Let's change the current element in the array. Sorry about that. I was doing it in a sample a little differently. So take the current element, so if it's 0, update it so that we're adding the percent signs around that value. So it says Corona, the new value is percent Corona percent. We don't need to use array push, I don't think. There we go. So these question marks are filled in dynamically by PDO from our keyword list array in order. So now if I search, this should fix the problem with records. Because we're not passing it in line anymore, it's now part of a bound parameter. That special character doesn't crash things. If I search 3 keywords, I get them all.
What would happen if we did not put keywords list in execute?
If you don't pass that in,
Yes.
then you're going to get a syntax error. Here's why. Because our SQL is now select star from beers where order by name. But the where, we have the word where, but no condition. So it won't return anything. There'll be a syntax error. So we're passing the entire array as the parameter to our execute function. I'm going to comment out my echo SQL. We don't need to print that out anymore. So I can comment that out. So we're just basically adding the percent signs into our array and passing the entire array as one parameter list. Now you could do this on our other pages. We don't have to name the parameters. We could always use that question mark and pass parameters in the execute method if you like. Just another way of doing it. There is still one little feature we need to add. Won't take us long. We want to give the user the choice. Right now we've hard coded in the word or. We want to make this a variable and let the user pick whether they're searching any keyword or all the keywords. So let's go up above to our form. And in here, we'll add in a select. We'll say name equals, we'll call it search type. And our little drop down is going to have 2 options. The first option will say any keyword. The last one will say all keyword. I'm going to give the first one a value of or. They say any keyword, we want to pass the word or back to the page. What should the value be here? You got it. So the second option value will be and the text can say all keywords. So this is what the user will see, but this is the value that will get passed back, or and. So our drop down should look like this. I just need to initialize keyword list as empty. So now we get this drop down. If I pick any, notice my get. So it says keyword equals light, ampersand, search type equals or. If I pick all, my search type value is now and. So we want to grab this value with get, and instead of hard coding the word or into our SQL, we want to make that a variable. So I'm just going to, I'm just going to initialize my keyword list variable to null. You don't have to do this on DreamHost. I get an error with my WAMP server if I don't do that. So we want to change this so it's not hard coded. So if we have keywords, so let's create a search type variable. So let's pull that value out of the URL. Whatever the user picked in the dropdown is going to add a search type variable into the URL. And now what will we do here on line 55? So search type, will have a value of and or. Yeah, let's take this variable and inject it here instead of the hard-coded word or. So now it will be whatever value the user picked. If they picked all keywords, we're going to have and in front of every keyword. If they left it the default as any keyword, then it will do an or search. Let's try it. So when I pick any, it says search type is or, and I get 5 records, right? As long as one of those words is found, I'm good. If I pick all, I get nothing because there are no records that have them all. This is probably a better search. When I pick any, gives me 3. When I pick all, I should only get 1. So this is a little easier for people to use than having to click advanced search and go off to a different page. We can enable that functionality right here.
What another options, not only I mean or and what else users could use? Not like, what is also popular?
Well, I mean, those are the common ones. Let's just go here. It could be an exact phrase where it will use equals instead of like, or you want to exclude, so that would be something like not in. But those are fairly advanced searches. Usually just giving the users the options of any keyword or all keywords, that's usually enough for most applications, most of the time. So the stuff that we did using the sort and using the search, these are basically reusable. We could use them in any kind of list. You're not required to use them for your assignment, but you could, for example, if you wanted to be able to sort and search, you could easily do it with what we've done today. And if you like using this method of just putting all the parameters in an array with question mark, and push sending the whole array to your execute, we can do that anytime we're running an SQL query with PDO. That will work. Okay, that's it for today. I'm going to stop my stream. I will push today's files to GitHub. Okay. So assignment 2 is due